There is organised sexual exploitation of children happening in London. Kids from the ages of 9 to 14 are being trafficked for prostitution on an industrial scale. Children were sold in crack houses in London, traded for 9 rocks of crack, which is a solid form of cocaine, taken to hotels in London for sexual acts and then taken to upmarket Arab restaurants in Mayfair, where they would be traded for as much as £2,000 each. This was happening on a daily basis, and it's way beyond notorious scandals. These were the startling, explosive claims made by Jon Wedger, a decorated former detective from the UK Metropolitan Police, who identified 52 sex abuse victims of grooming gangs. He claims his efforts to safeguard these victims, they were totally blocked when he presented his findings to the local London councils that fall under the purview of London's Mayor Sadiq Khan. So in a way, he is blaming Sadiq Khan for protecting these grooming gangs from functioning in London. The matter gained more attention when Sadiq Khan did not provide a clear reply to London Assembly member Susan Hall when he was asked how many rape gangs exist in London. What's the reality of these grooming gangs in London? Is there a cover-up from the Mayor Sadiq Khan? To discuss this further with me is Lynne Donnell. She's a journalist and author from London. Lynne, thanks so much for joining me here. These were explosive claims made by Jon Wedger. Is there an attempt at a cover-up on grooming gangs in London by the Mayor himself?
Hi, thanks for having me. I think that very many people in the UK generally, not just in London, believe that there have been attempts to cover up or sideline the grooming gangs issue over the past 10 or 15 years. It's been going on for a very long time, and very many children, mostly white working class girls across the country, have been victimised. There have been reports that have said 250,000 or more girls have been caught up by grooming gangs in about 50 cities across the country over the last 10 or 15 years. And many of the grooming gangs have been South Asian. In the UK, when the word Asian is used, it usually refers to South Asia, not to East Asia. And there have been investigations, principally by one particular reporter, Andrew Norfolk, at the Times newspaper, that uncovered the involvement of gangs of predominantly Pakistani and some Afghan men in a number of cities that victimised young girls in prostitution gangs, sex exploitation, getting them addicted to drugs. It's pretty horrific stuff. And I think that the details, the really deep details of the entire situation are yet to be revealed.
Lynne, as gruesome as these details are and as concerning as they are about, how children are being trafficked and put into prostitution along with drugs and then sold, all happening in London, there's a big question, of course, here. How have grooming gangs thrived in the UK for so long? Because time and again, Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor, has been asked in the London Assembly to comment on whether London has suffered the same type of systematic trafficking of girls as has occurred in other towns like Rochdale and Rotherham. There is never a clear reply, is what reports suggest. Several times he's been asked. What is it hinting at?
I think it's hinting at a community denial, to be honest with you. There have been a number of reviews, and there's most recently in June with the release of a what's called an audit, which is a review of the situation by a very senior lawmaker here, which has pointed to the fact that there was a great reluctance to identify the ethnicity of people involved in grooming gangs. And I have experienced it myself. I went to a press conference in January at the Pakistani High Commission, which was organised essentially to deflect attention away from the involvement of Pakistani men or men of Pakistani origin in grooming gangs. So I think that there is a communal desire to deny an ethnic component. Now, it is a fact, it has been said here that 83% of the sexual abuse of minors in the UK is committed by white men. It's a proportionality issue, and studies have shown that the proportionality of the involvement of Pakistani origin men is also proportionate to the numbers in the population. So there are between 1.7 and 2 million Pakistani people in the UK, and so those numbers add up on a demographic proportional basis. Now, the Pakistani community groups are afraid that they will be targeted on a basis of race if they are identified as being proportionally involved in the grooming of young girls. There are some leaders, very respectable senior leaders of the community who work in the legal structure in the police, who are very vocal about the fact that the Pakistani community in the UK is not facing up to the fact that Pakistani men are deeply involved in criminal grooming and sexual exploitation of young white girls.
I hear your point. Lynne, of course, you've given the Pakistani connect here, and while that remains, do you feel any of these gangs can thrive or even exist for years? And Jon Wedger suggested they've been on for at least 20 years. Can they thrive without any kind of administrative protection? And of course, the administration lies in Sadiq Khan's hand.
I don't know about blaming Sadiq Khan and his administration for protecting Asian Pakistani grooming gangs. But I think there has been a deep concern at establishment level not to name the gangs as Pakistani so that they aren't seen as being racist. And so there is a disproportionality in saying that Pakistani men are involved in this extreme sexual exploitation of young white women and girls and not wanting to be seen as racist. There has been an imbalance there. And I think maybe that is what endures with Sadiq Khan. I don't think we can blame him for a cover-up because I don't have any, and I haven't seen any evidence for that. But I think that there is possibly an extreme sensitivity to naming race as an element in this huge problem.
Understood. And Lynne, the US President, Donald Trump made, of course, he said a few things in the UN, and when it comes to London specifically, he suggested London will have Sharia law. The UK's Prime Minister has called it ridiculous nonsense. Can Sharia law be a reality in UK?
Well, I think Sharia law is already a reality in some parts of the UK. Yes, indeed. I think that large communities of people of a Muslim background, where Islam is a very strong element in the community makeup, do resort to Sharia law at a community level. And so I think that it exists. It remains for the prevailing establishment, the government, the judicial authorities here to ensure that it doesn't prevail. And I think that's something that we have to see being dealt with. But again, this fear of the establishment of being seen as racist in dealing with extrajudiciality, which Sharia law clearly is in this country, is something that has to be dealt with. And I think we have to remember also that Islam is not a race. It is a religion, and it should be dealt with as such.
Lynne, thanks so much for joining me here and having this discussion with me. Of course, a lot of claims have been made. Some have been proven, some have been not. Some have not been. And as far as the future is concerned, what goes on further, we'll continue to track the developments which continue to come in from UK. That was Lynne O'Donnell, journalist and author, joining me from London. Thanks so much.